Hello everybody, and either welcome or welcome back to my podcast. As always, if you do like this, please rate, comment, and subscribe. You can find me at iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Spotify, and YouTube. So I will apologize in advance if this episode is a little shorter than my normal weekly roundups, because I am working on a little bit of a time crunch today. But obviously, news has happened in the past week. So let's go ahead and start with the story that is obviously pretty much dominating everything right now, and that is that Julian Assange has been arrested and may be extradited to the US. It's kind of up in the air right now as to how or when or what, but that does seem to be like that is the original end goal of arresting him. Ecuador revoked their asylum for Assange on Thursday, April 11th, and the UK police came in and arrested him that same day. They removed him from the Ecuadorian embassy in London. And so right now, the UK is currently holding him, pending a decision on what exactly to do with him at this point. Now, obviously, there has been a lot of fallout from this, but I want to go ahead and start with the indictment itself, because that is really what is the most interesting part about this to me. And what it is, and you can read it online, it's like 7 pages long, it's not that long. But basically, he has been charged with one crime, and that is conspiracy to commit computer intrusion. Now, this indictment centers solely around the Chelsea Manning document drop. So, interestingly enough, this says nothing about 2016, nothing about Hillary's emails, nothing about the DNC emails. None of that is mentioned in this indictment. Now, that is not to say that they can't bring additional charges later, but as it stands right now, this all centers around the Chelsea Manning case. So, like I said, the one count, it was actually the indictment was originally handed down back in March of last year. And as some of you may remember, because this was a little bit of a story, we actually all accidentally found out that the indictment existed back in November of last year, because somebody was doing research on another case going through that same court and stumbled upon some ginormous jackass dumb mistake of somebody basically using the Assange indictment as a template for another indictment, but they forgot to take his name out, and they forgot to take certain pieces of information out that made it clear that, yes, this was an indictment against Julian Assange. So we all knew that the indictment existed, but nobody knew what was in it until this past week, when after they arrested him, and they did make the indictment public. But that has been, like I said, it's the date on the indictment is March 8th, I do believe, of 2018. So the indictment itself is not new. And there has been a U.S. extradition request for Assange for as far back as I can remember. It's been at least a couple of years. So neither one of those two things is something new. So it leads to a couple of interesting questions as to why me, why now? But before we get there, I want to talk about the verbiage in the indictment, because it's a little worrisome to me. And obviously, if you follow any of this on social media, there has been quite the divide as to reactions to this indictment. And I will go ahead and say, like I said, it is just that one charge. And what is said in the indictment is that at some point, apparently Assange was attempting to help Chelsea Manning with cracking a password to get information from whatever servers that they keep these sorts of classified military documents on. That's a little beyond my pay grade, but that is the charge that he is being charged with. Like, that is the crime that he's being charged with, is that he was attempting to help her hack a password. Was not successful, by the way. This was not a successful password hack. So she did not get those documents, but obviously she had gotten other documents that she gave to Assange. I think everybody kind of knows the backstory of Chelsea Manning at this point, so we don't really need to go into that. But that was really like the thing that put put WikiLeaks on the map. So it's interesting that they're going back that far. That you're going all the way back to, I think that was originally back in 2010, and it's 2019 now. Yeah, it's a little hinky. And a couple of people were very eagle-eyed and looked at the date on the indictment and did the math and realized that that indictment was running up like right on the statute of limitations for when you would be able to charge Assange with this. Like it was right up against that line. So again, very, very interesting on the timing on that. Now, the thing that also concerns me about the verbiage of the indictment is that it is brought up several times that Julian Assange was helping Manning do whatever it is he was trying to help her do to get these documents with the intent of posting them up on WikiLeaks. Okay, here is my problem with that. Obviously, it is not a crime to post documents that you receive from somebody else and make them public. Or at least it's not right now. This case is going to be very interesting if it ever does come to trial, which we are a far, far, far ways away from that. Like, we're still trying to figure out extradition, let alone being put on trial, whether it will be a public trial, whether we will get to see any of the evidence that they do or do not have against Assange. A lot of people have weighed in that just on the basis of this indictment, this is looking very weak. And it does look really weak because you're basically saying that, yes, you tried to help her hack this password. And yes, that's illegal. And yes, if he did that, that is incredibly fucking stupid. You do not get caught trying to hack into a government server. Don't do that. Do not do that. But there's verbiage in the indictment, and it keeps getting brought up, the fact that he was doing this with the aims of getting these documents to post on WikiLeaks. It seems to me that continuously pointing that out in the indictment is trying to make a kind of backdoor case for the criminalization of posting the documents up onto WikiLeaks. That is a huge, 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 massive problem if that is a standard that gets applied going forward. And think of it this way. Let me give you an example of why this verbiage seems so weird to me. Imagine if somebody was accused of attempted robbery. Like, you were accused that you were going to rob a bank and you were unsuccessful. But in the indictment, it keeps getting brought up what you were going to do with the money. You see, that would be irrelevant to the case. Like, if the problem is that you were going to rob a bank, you attempted to rob a bank, then that is the problem, not what you were going to do with the money afterwards. You see what I'm saying? It's like, bringing up what Assange was going to do with these documents, to me, does not seem particularly relevant to, if your problem is just that he tried to help her hack this password, then why do you keep bringing that up? Like, that is not relevant to the password hacking. It shouldn't matter what he was going to do with the documents, whether he was going to put them up on WikiLeaks, or he was going to read them himself, or throw them in the garbage, or turn them into confetti. Like, that shouldn't matter. So that's why that verbiage is just making me very, very uncomfortable, because it seems to me, like I said, like you're trying to backdoor that being a problem. And the reason why that would be such a problem is everybody who works in journalism and works in kind of like those national security whistleblowers, just covering the government in general. At some point, of course, you are going to have sources who bring you material that is not necessarily meant for anybody other than certain people to see. I mean, and that's how you break these stories. And if you are working that beat and you do kind of have to break those stories, sometimes you gotta kind of toe the line between what's legal and illegal, and sometimes do some straight up illegal stuff. That's part of the game. And there's also the point made in the indictment that Assange was encouraging Manning to get more documents to bring to him, which, yes, if you are a journalist and you have a source and they're bringing you documents, of course you're going to fucking encourage them to bring you more documents. That's kind of part of how you make your story. So again, if you're going to make that an issue, then all of a sudden that makes pretty much all reporting an issue. Because if you're going to make it a situation where you can hem somebody up for encouraging a source to give you more information, like, that's literally every journalist. Like, I don't know any journalist who's like, no, it's cool, you don't have to get me any more information. No, it's cool. Nah, just, you're good where you're at. No, that's every journalist. So, like I said, there's just the verbiage here. It's like you're trying to say that this one thing is your problem with Assange, but all these other words say something else, and it's all those other words that are concerning me and should be concerning everybody else. But some people want to just stay right where the charge is, which, okay, sure, I will give you that. If they have proof that that is what he did, then yes, that is illegal. And I question the proof, and I also would really like to see this go to trial just to see. The only people who I think would have access to this information would be either Assange or Manning. Now, Manning, for her part, has absolutely refused to ever flip on Assange, and for what it's worth, she's paying a massive price for that right now. So, I don't know where they would have gotten the evidence to prove that Assange did what they say he did. I'm very curious to know where that came from, because I can pretty much tell you where it didn't come from. So, again, but this is one of those things that we're so far away from trial and figuring out all that. Like, there's so much that has to happen before that. But that's where we're at right now. It's kind of up in the air what's going to happen to him. And so, the fallout from all of this. I'm sure I don't have to explain to anybody that there are people who lionize Assange, and there are people who despise him. And of course, this split has been made entirely obvious because of this arrest. So you have people who are decrying it and who are saying that this is wrong, that he shouldn't be extradited to the US, that he shouldn't be put on trial. And then you also have people who are very happy about this. And it's very interesting to see who is and is not happy about it, especially given that before 2016, there were a lot of people on the left who really loved Assange. And then the emails happened. The DNC hack happened. The Hillary emails happened. And then they didn't like him so much no more. And that's very curious. So, yeah, it's been a very interesting split. And I would think that even if you don't like Assange, and you do think he is some kind of Putin puppet stooge troll asshole human being, that you would at least see where this is a problem, where the US is going in and extraditing somebody from another country to bring them to this country to put them on trial for something like that. That sets up a really ugly precedent, and the things that he's being charged on and the precedents that would be set if he were convicted of what they're charging him with, and if there are any additional charges and what those additional charges would be. Like, this case could set some very, very ugly precedent for freedom of press in this country. So I would hope that people could at least put their feelings about Assange aside and focus on that. But I know I'm asking a lot, and I know I'm not going to get what I'm asking for here. But the next question that a lot of people have is the why now? For what it is worth, Lenin Moreno, the president of Ecuador, has said that they started this process back in July of 2018 of revoking his asylum. And so obviously that has officially happened now. They've also revoked his citizenship. So again, it's a little weird, but what else is going on behind the scenes that I don't think a lot of people have paid attention to is that Moreno is currently in a little bit of a corruption scandal, and his administration has blamed this on Assange, that there has been a document drop of his personal text, WhatsApps, stuff like that, and it was alleged that in those communications, Moreno had offered to sell Assange for money to take care of Ecuador's debt. Okay, stay with me here. Back in March of this year, March 11th, obviously roughly a month before Assange was arrested, the IMF approved a $4.2 billion loan to Ecuador. Are these things related? I don't know. Does it look shady as fuck right now? Yes, it does. Because if you're already kind of on record and you've been outed as offering to sell Assange, and then all of a sudden you get this $4.2 billion loan from the IMF, and then a month later you've revoked Assange's asylum and his citizenship, and now he's in custody, it don't look good. It doesn't look very clean. And of course, obviously, I'm sure everybody who listens to this podcast has their issues with the IMF, obviously. But this whole situation looks a little dirty. A little dirty. So, that's kind of all we know right now. Like I said, the news broke Thursday morning, and obviously today is Sunday. So this is still an evolving story, and we will see where this ends up. But before I leave out of Assange for now, there has been a very interesting trend kind of going amongst the journalists who want to distance themselves from Assange, and that is this idea that Assange is not a journalist. Okay, so fucking what? Like, it's interesting to watch these people try to put distance, because honestly, that statement saying that Assange is not a journalist does not make any difference in this situation whatsoever. Whether you want to think he's a journalist, whether you want to classify him as a publisher, whether you want to classify him as just some regular person, or some asshole, or whatever you want to think, it doesn't matter. And people who are trying to make this argument that he's not a journalist, okay, follow that logic to its inevitable conclusion, which is saying that you think journalists have specific rights that other people don't, and they don't. The First Amendment and freedom of speech applies to everybody who is going through the U.S. criminal justice system. And to answer another question that I've seen people say is, why would our laws apply to Julian Assange? He is not a U.S. citizen. Our laws do not rely on U.S. citizenship in order to apply to you. If you are going through the U.S. criminal justice system, then yes, you have constitutional rights. Yes, you have presidential rights that apply to you whether you are a U.S. citizen or not. So that whole argument is just like, did you guys not think this through? Did nobody think either one of these arguments through? It's just like, come on, man. But like I said, this is an ongoing situation. I'm sure we will be talking about this much, much more in the future, especially once it's decided on extradition. And for what it's worth, I've seen reports that France has offered him asylum if he asks for it. And I know there has been a lot of backlash within the UK, and there is very much an anti-extradition sentiment in the UK. So it remains to be seen what is going to happen to Assange at this point. But moving on to the other story from this week that I wanted to talk about, that everybody was talking about until it kind of got shoved out of the headlines by Assange, is what in the ever-loving hell is going on in DHS and with immigration in general. Now, last Sunday, actually like right after I finished recording last Sunday, of course, because that is the nature of talking about politics on a podcast, is as soon as you're done recording, new news is going to break and you're just going to be like, shit. But it came out that Christian Nielsen, who was the head of the Department of Homeland Security, DHS, was quitting her job. And there was some debate as to whether it was quitting or was being fired, but it seems that she did decide to quit and nobody really stopped her. So, she was head of DHS for 18 months, which is about as long as a Trump appointee lasts in any particular job nowadays. And yeah, this is another one that's been met with a lot of different reactions. And here's mine. Yes, what Nielsen did as director of DHS was horrible. Like, she ended up becoming the face of the family separation policy and all of the other horrible, awful, not good policies aimed at these migrant caravans and at asylum seekers over the past 18 months. She ended up being the public face of these, as the director of DHS would be. But these were obviously Trump edicts. Like, this was coming out of the Trump administration where she's being told what to do. So, as bad as it was, and I am not downplaying how just awful and horrible the immigration policy was under her rule, at the end of the day, that wasn't good enough for Trump. And it had been reported all throughout her tenure that there was this always constant struggle between her and the Trump administration. Most people say technically between her and Stephen Miller, of them wanting more, wanting things to be more draconian, more punitive, more harsh, and her trying to put the brakes on that and be like, no, we can't do more than this. That is scary when you think about it, because what is going to happen with the next director of DHS, since it has now been made abundantly clear that Trump wants more than what Nielsen was giving? Like, that wasn't enough for him. That is a little frightening. And of course, this has been kind of a weird dumpster fire of a story to try to follow, because it's like you've got one group of people saying one thing, another group of people saying another thing, and it's just been like nobody seems to know what the fuck is going on in DHS or with immigration policy right now. And that's a little frightening, because that's something that we should really be trying to figure out and kind of get codified, and not have be this weird mess that just changes hourly. And another thing that has happened on the immigration front this week is this idea of, well, first off, Trump saying that the country is full. The country's not full. I don't think we really need to go into deep details about whether or not America is full. America is not full. There are places in America where nobody fucking lives. Not full. But the one thing that I do really want to talk about before we leave out of this topic, because this has been such a hard story to try to follow, and that is this idea that Trump has floated of shipping asylum seekers to sanctuary cities. Now, before the first Trump tweet about this, like literally hours before that Trump tweet, there were news stories coming out about this idea having been floated and being shot down, that this was something that was not going to be pursued. And then this idiot goes and tweets about it as if it is something that is going to happen. Nobody quite knows if it's going to happen. DHS was very much on the no wagon, but now Trump keeps tweeting about it, and it's like, what the fuck? Because first of all, catching people and then relocating them to sanctuary cities, that's catch and release, my dude. And I thought we weren't doing that. But the other thing is that Trump is meaning this as a punitive thing towards sanctuary cities. What? No, that's the whole point of sanctuary cities, is that they want to take these people in. you're not really punishing them by giving them what they want. You're certainly not punishing asylum seekers by being like, okay, yeah, sure, come here and we'll cart you to Oakland or San Francisco or whatever other sanctuary city that you want us to cart you to. How is that supposed to stop anything? Like, it's just the dumbest idea. Like, I don't even understand. Like, this is not owning the libs. This is just dumb. And so, of course, there has been actually not a lot of backlash from the mayors of the sanctuary cities, because they're basically like, okay, yeah, sure, bring them. And it's one of those where, again, it's like, can we please get some kind of coherent, cogent immigration policy to where everybody knows what the hell is supposed to be happening at any given time, so that it's not this mass confusion all the time. Like, that's what's creating this problem at the border, is it's just mass confusion. It's like every fucking day there's some new immigration policy, and now all of a sudden we're shipping people over here or over there, and we're letting people through these ports of entry, but not that port of entry, or you need to go stay in this city or that city while you wait for your asylum case. And it's just like, there's no coherent policy to process all of these people. And to be sure, it's a lot of fucking people. There are a lot of people coming to the border, which is why we need to get this shit sorted out so we can figure out what to do with all these people instead of just shuttling them all over the place and constantly changing where they need to go and what they need to do, because all that's going to lead to is more illegal border crossings. Because, like I've said before, and I will keep saying it until I'm blue in the face, you're not stopping these people from coming. They've already made their decision when they started heading to the U.S. that they're coming to the U.S. If they wanted to stay in another country, they would have did that. They didn't do that. They came to our border. And you're not stopping them. There's nothing you can do to stop them. So what you need to do is start thinking about what to do with these people. Because obviously deterrents don't work. Like, that was the whole point of family separation, was that was supposed to be the worst, most awful, punitive, draconian thing that you could possibly do to these people, and it did not stop them from coming. So it's time to start acknowledging that and to try to figure out, like, what to do. Because this is just getting insane. And however you feel about borders and immigration and asylum seekers and all of that, they are people. They're real live people right now who have no fucking clue what the hell is going on. And that's not okay. Like, that's not cool. Like, even if the answer is you can't come in, like, at least give these people an answer so they know what the fuck to do with the rest of their lives. Like it's just, it's insane. It's absolutely freaking insane. So those are the two stories that I really wanted to make sure that I talked about this week. Like I said, I'm sorry this is a shorter episode, but I'm kind of running on a time crunch. I've got other interviews. I've got to share my space. So I will try to record maybe another episode in a couple of days, because there are a couple of other things I still want to talk about. But like I said, I just need to go ahead and wrap this one up. So as always, if you did make it this far, thank you for listening. And if you do like this, please rate, comment, and subscribe. You can find me on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Spotify, and YouTube. Take care, and until next time.